You've decided to get an AR-15 and you want to know what to put on it. Let's talk about that. Welcome to the Patriot Training YouTube channel. My name is Clay Howell. I'm the owner and head firearms instructor at Patriot Training. The purpose of this video is to talk about how to equip your AR-15. Many people reach out to me and they ask me what equipment they should put on their AR-15, what optic, what sling, what's required, what's optional. And I figured, the best way to answer this question is to put it in a YouTube video so that I can forward people to this in the future. So if you got sent this video by me, hey, congratulations. This video was designed for you, my friend. Before we get going, I would like to urge you to remember, don't go into debt to do any of this. Don't buy a gun or accessories right now and then have to turn around in 2 months and have to sell the gun in order to pay for, the flat tire on your car or what have you. If you're financing your freedom with credit, you're doing something wrong. Debt is not a force multiplier. This should be done with additional cash you set off to the side that it's okay if it gets spent on a hobby and goes away and never comes back. That's the idea. First up, let's talk about your must-haves. In my estimation, the must-haves are an optic, magazines, a sling, and a light. And in that order. When we talk about an optic, understand irons are out. Do not rely on irons unless you also rely on telegraph for communicating with friends and loved ones who live in other cities. If you, however, are watching this in the 21st century, let's not rely on irons. Let's rely on a little bit of technology that will make your life easier and better. The most ideal optic for the vast majority of AR-15 owners is going to be a red dot or some sort of holographic optic. This is ideal for home defense and for most civilian possibilities. Second, after the red dot, would be an LPVO or low power variable optic. As of the filming of this video, most LPVOs are offered in 1:6 or 1:8 power, and either of those would be just fine. The close range capabilities, the 1 power, is not as good as a red dot. However, it is acceptable in most scenarios. Next up, and this is getting into the area of you probably shouldn't, but they are an option, and that would be your prism style optics. Some are straight up called prisms, some are ACOGs, and some are LCANs, and there's all sorts in this category. And these are typically fixed power, anywhere from about 3 power, some are maybe 4, some maybe 5 power. And these optics are best for use at 50 to 300 yards. They can be made to work up close, and they can be made to work at longer distances too, but that does not mean that they are best for those purposes. Having a prism style optic, an ACOG, LCAN, what have you, will require that you get additional training and that you practice more to have those necessary skills. Moving along, there is a MPVO, that is a medium power variable optic. I have this on a scope that is 2 to 10 power, and this would be more for a precision build, and this is not a good idea for your primary first AR-15. When you get to the point that it's time to build a second AR-15, I typically suggest people go for some sort of a precision build, and that is when you would want to start looking at an MPVO, or even its brother, the HPVO, the high power variable optic, a larger, more powerful scope. For your first AR-15, avoid. Next up is magazines. Assuming it's legal where you live, stick to 30-round magazines. Speaking of which, elections have consequences and your vote matters. And understand that voting Republican does not mean that you're voting pro-gun. It just means that you're picking the party that will infringe on you a little slower in many cases. Vet your candidates, hold their feet to the fire, don't allow any more compromise. Back on topic, if it's permitted where you live, stick to a 30-round magazine. I highly recommend PMags. Metal mags can be okay. Certain brands are, because it's very easily to get fooled on those. I don't suggest them for most people. And 40-round magazines tend to have more malfunctions, even the PMags in my observation, so I tend to steer people away from those. 20-round magazines and 10-round magazines are for special purposes, so unless you live in a state that limits you to that, I would not recommend it. That 20-round magazine would be a good choice for you for your second AR, that precision build that we talked about a moment ago. Next up, we're going to talk about slings. And when we talk about slings, these days there are really only two choices. There's a 2-point sling and there's a 1-point sling. Now, I'm going to always advise that you stay away from the El Cheapo models. If it's 10 or 15 bucks on Amazon, well then, that should tell you something right then and right there. I highly recommend that unless you like getting smacked in the groin and in the knees, that you stick with a 2-point sling. A 1-point has an advantage in CQB, and it can have an advantage in getting in and out of cars, and since that is not a civilian use, and you say, well, Clay, what about home defense? Well, you should not have a sling on your home defense AR, and I know that's going to stir up some controversy, but I'll make a video about that a little bit later. But your sling is for when you go to work, or if the power's out and the shit hits the fan, kind of a scenario, something like that. That's what your sling is for. And I recommend a Vickers style sling or a Magpul MS1, also the Magpul MS2, MS3, and MS4. They differ just a little bit in what kind of attachment points they have, so look at those. I recommend them. I usually get the MS1 and then use my own attachment points to secure them to the rifle. And what you want to do with this sling is you want to adjust it so that you can just get into a shooting position while standing when the sling is at its tightest setting. Then when you let out the slack and when you swim your support arm out, you will have maximum maneuverability. Fourth thing you need is a light. And if you're going to use this gun for home defense, I would suggest that you attach the light to the gun so it is available. You can get pressure pads and things like that where you can touch some kind of a pad or some kind of a switch somewhere else on your gun and turn on the light, and that is a blessing and that can be a curse as well. So be mindful of it, learn how it works, and don't have a negligent light discharge, because you can let the bad guy know where you are before you are ready. That said, there's no need for that. You can certainly just keep the light on the front of the gun, and if you have to pick it up, just go ahead and turn it on and go from there. Let's talk about items that are optional. These are things that may be circumstantial, that I may just steer you clear of, or that just, that's not a mandatory, and you should take it accordingly. First up, backup iron sights. I might choose to have backup iron sights. If I do that, I want to either have the red dot where I can co-witness them so that I can see the backup iron sights if the batteries go out, or if it's a scope or a prism or LPVO, I want to have a quick detach on that scope so that if I need the backup irons, I can remove the optics so that I can actually see through the irons. Another choice might be to get the 45-degree offset irons. I don't personally recommend those. I go with the quick detach, but you do you. Again, strictly optional. Optics have really improved in quality over the last 10 or 15 years, and very few of them ever just break. It's very highly unlikely. Batteries do run out, but there's always that chance. The second optional item might be a magnifier for your red dot. And I would suggest that as your training career progresses, and especially if you want to take the class expert rifleman at Patriot Training, you definitely want to look into that magnifier for the red dot. If you want to have a really high quality dot and use an El Cheapo magnifier, that is probably okay. I have not seen many magnifiers break. Again, strictly optional. Another thing that's optional is if you have an LPVO, or you have a prism or a scope or an ACOG or something like that, you might want to look into a piggyback red dot. Those dots can be very helpful and can help you, do the close quarters work when you have the scope. So that might be a possible solution for you there. And the last optional equipment item I'm going to mention in this video is the bipod. Do not get this for your home defense rifle. The bipod is strictly for that precision build that I've mentioned a couple times in here. When you get a precision build, you definitely need to have a good bipod, but up until then, don't worry about it. Well, friends, that just about brings this video to a close. There are a million other things that we could have talked about. There's a reason I didn't. I believe that the things presented here are the must-haves and then the should-haves right after that. And we hopefully gave you a good idea of the circumstances when you would want each, and that's on those should-haves. Each of the must-haves, you really need to work on them and work on them in that order. What do you think? Give me your comments below. Love to hear your interpretation of things or what you would suggest. I would urge you to hit like, hit subscribe, and click that notification bell so that we can notify you when the next Patriot Training video is going to be released. And as always, I'd like to remind you, you don't have to be a Patriot to train, but you do have to train if you want to be a Patriot. Take care.